Hey YouTube, today we have on the bench a few more Bally, Midway, Williams soundboards, and we're going to talk about the interchangeability of System 11 soundboards. This is the D11581 board, and then this also is used in several video games, and I'll talk about how you can take those ones from a video game and implement them in a System 11 Bally Williams game. So we have three of them here. One of them is an original System 11 soundboard out of an Elvira and the Party Monsters, and then one of them is from an Arch Rivals video game, and the other one is from a High Impact football game. And kind of looking them over, they do look identical, and there are some minor differences, but this one is actually the Elvira and the Party Monsters board, and then you could tell by the game number there. This one is out of an Arch Rivals, and if you're trying to use this in a System 11 pinball machine, this is a 1-to-1, should be a drop-in replacement. These ROMs on earlier System 11s are 256 ROMs, and they are the same size on Arch Rival. So you would need to burn new ROMs, and then it would work pretty well. And I tested this one with Elvira ROMs, and the sound mixing and balancing was pretty good. On PinWiki, there is a good table of, there's a couple resistors kind of in this area that handle the audio that comes from the MPU, so that comes in here. This is the volume pot, this is the power, and then signals, and then this is the speakers out. But they are different values of resistors in here, and you could, if to your ear, if it sounds off, like the speech is too quiet or the music is too quiet, PinWiki has that nice table where you can modify those resistors. But to my ear, I think it was a pretty good drop-in, even though these resistor values are pretty different. So Arch Rivals is pretty much a 1-to-1. The other nice thing about using one of these video game soundboards in a pinball machine is Elvira uses a fully stuffed sound section on this board. As Williams System 11 progressed, less and less sound was handled on the MPU, which is that top left corner, and then more and more was handled by the actual soundboard. So like your music in Elvira comes from this, and then just a couple lanes off of your C, VSD, and your DAC. But in earlier System 11 games, like I have an Earthshaker and a Taxi, this is not fully stuffed. So not all of these components are down here. I don't think there's a CVSD, and then Earthshaker and Taxi only use two of these ROMs. So this is kind of being fully stuffed. It's the universal donor, and it should work in all System 11 games. And they started using this one. It's not correct in the manual. I'll fight you over this. But I've seen Tomcats come with this board that were later in the run, even though the Tomcat manual has the previous one that was used in Millionaire. Kind of that transitional between Pinbot and this one. So from F14 forward, this board, if it's fully stuffed, should be the universal donor all the way up until WPC. So then they were also used, the same soundboard, looks identical, and it was used in High Impact, and this is what this board is from. I don't have a super High Impact, so I don't know what the difference is there. But even though this looks identical, there's a big difference. These ROMs are physically bigger in size and in memory capability. So you can kind of see how they're darn near at the edge of the board, whereas these ones had room for at least a bypass capacitor up there. So these were 256 ROMs. These are actually 1 meg. So to get this to work in a System 11 pinball, you'll have to, if your pinball has 256 size ROMs, then you're going to have to quadruple these to get them up to 1 meg. Now in later System 11 games, I don't have any of these here, but there was a jumper implemented. I think they said it's somewhere up here so that you can go from 256 ROMs to 512. That jumper is on this board. It was the W10, W11 jumper, but I couldn't find in the schematics for High Impact if this would also allow you to go from 1 meg, which is what they have now, or if you moved it over to W10, maybe you can do 512 if you didn't want to double up your ROM images. But I didn't play around with that. I just quadrupled my Elvira ones and tested it out. And again, even though the mixing resistors kind of in this area were a little bit different value than the actual Elvira board, to my ear, it sounded pretty good. And in my opinion, it was a nice drop-in replacement. The other thing to be aware of, I've been spouting this for years, but cap these darn boards. Peter at Arcade Parts and Repair sells a really nice kit I think they're 14 bucks is pretty cheap. But on this particular one, that axial cap at, I think that was C11. Can't quite see, not C11 and C12, so it's covered up, but that 1 microfarad one actually leaked out of its negative end. You can see that there's some, what looks like a wet slick there is actually the conformal coating, but I ended up removing that bad capacitor, and then I had to socket the CVSD because it kind of hit one of those lower legs. I removed all 4 of these axial components as well as this capacitor. I also took C12 out to cap it, but then I took the resistor out above and below because kind of everything in this area was hit with electrolyte, and that was acidic, so you're going to want a base to neutralize that and then clean it up. So I just neutralized it, sanded it clean, grabbed parts off of a donor board and then resoldered those in, and then kind of, again, that wet slick part that you can, that looks wet, is actually just conformal coating to cover up any bare copper. But a lot of these are starting to leak, and I have other videos talking about pinball boards, but it's literally the same board with the same bad axial capacitors, and then the radials are starting to leak. So hopefully this video helps you out. If you're not familiar with doubling up or quadrupling up ROMs, I might figure out how to get the camera to record something on computer, then I can show how to do that with the programmer that I have. So hopefully this video helps.